Good morning. This is Dr. Vivek Bhatnagar, Associate Professor. Okay, today I'm delivering the lecture of software engineering. The content of the topic is requirement analysis, SRS, why we need SRS, and what are the ingredients in the SRS, right? And how to validate the requirement. So there are three, four topics which we would like to discuss in the software requirement specification. So, so as you already know, uh, we are working in an phases for the development of a system engineering as well as yielding a product of the software engineering. So the first and the foremost phase is a requirement. In the requirement phase, we are concerned with what the supposed system will do, and we are not concerned how the system will do. So for that, the first and the foremost phase is the requirement, and it is going to be a very crucial step while choosing the requirement. Because if we have chosen the wrong requirement, then the whole product can get fail or the project can get fail. So, so likewise, as you can see, uh, as far as this requirement is concerned, we have to have go with some process how we start with the product phase of the requirement, and before that, is it required to conduct the feasibility study for the same? Okay, because we would like to know that the project is found to be feasible on that place or not. So for that point of view, we have to check the the project on the client side or where you want to start the project. Then one of the biggest challenges, because as I told you, it is a crucial process and we want to be optimal solution that is a low cost, high quality and small cycle of time. So it should be the document which should be well written. So what is to be there? There is always a bridge gap between the both two parties. Like the developer do not know what they built, and even though the customer do not know what to expect, so they just make a gap between the two parties. Then again the question rises, what to validate? Okay, how to have to how we can say that the requirement is going to be the feasible or we have finalized the requirement. So most of the time we have to verify the requirement, then later on we have to validate that requirement. Then how to go with the process, because as I told you, it is to be a very crucial process. Start with the problem. As you know, the requirement came, then you know problem start, because the team has to start work. So as far as it is to be concerned, the process which is to be a very crucial process, as you can see on the figure, you start with the requirement elicitation or the gathering of the requirement. Then after you go with the analysis for the requirement, then you have to document it and you have to review for the same. So before going out with the process of the requirement, you know it would come all in the form of raw data. So you have to scrutinize the raw data first, then the business development executive go with to documentation. Then all the documentation contains and make a functional specification. Then after functional specification, this F spec is to be reviewed by the team of SDLC team. Then team of SDLC team will scrutinize the data and they will make the T spec, that is called technical specification. Then this is how the first work of the requirement is start with the, that is the T spec technical specification. Then after the T spec, the the team will make a review of the peer review, because how to gather the requirement, it is only the first stage, that is the elicitation of the requirement. So this we are doing because the developer and the customer, they always have bridge a gap between the two parties, right? So what is to be there? uh, there must be a contract between between the developer and the customer, that I will be doing work for that project, or this company has signed a project to XYZ, then I'll be doing work for between the two. So agreement is to be there. So if it is to be there, then uh, uh, how to uncover the uh, how to uncover the errors in the requirement, because most of the time it changes the requirement, most of the time the schedule is tight, and mostly what they have, the developer and the customer, they always have a gap because between the two parties, because they do not know what the developer actually want and developer does not know what the customer actually want. So just to make a bridge between two parties, we need a SRS document. So requirement, some requirement that are the known requirement, some are the unknown requirement, and some is the undreamed requirement. Most of the time there's some features that are not been added, like the requirement that must not be known to the customer. Some requirement that have multiple meaning, but their ambiguity is different, like the ambiguity in the requirement that may affect. Then sometime we need to analyze that there are functions that needs to be performed according to some specification. So which is to be there, then which comes in the category of how many features are to be there, which must be added later on. So this is the functional requirement, the product features of the requirement. The non-functional features, which are the feature which are stipulated to the quality of the product, which is called the functional requirement, non-functional requirement, sorry. So as you can see, the non-functional requirement, there are 12 feature of the quality which must be there, which is come in the category of the functional requirement. So many requirement that the user usually want when we talk about the SRS, like the system requirement that must be needed for the user point of view, what is the function that must be performed due to the user input, which is to be there. Then why it is necessary to conduct a feasibility study? The one example of IBM is to be there so that you can read and you can get to know that why it is necessary to conduct the feasibility study, right? Then because there are so many factors that are economical feasibility and technical feasibility, then how to find that that the project is found to be feasible in economical zone as well as the technical region. So most of the time I have to check the feasibility of the project, whether the project is found to be feasible or not. So for that, I have to conduct the feasibility study. So most of the time, as you can say, the technical feasibility is to be concerned, the the document which is called the SRS document, or most of the time it is be written in a natural language, that is English. You had not been able to find any document which you find in the language called Sanskrit or maybe some other language, right? So most of the time there are economical feasible zone. Then why the big university campuses in there in the rural area? Why it is not on the main highway? Because that place is found to be technical feasible zone. That place is found to be economical feasible zone. Here we have the subsidy on the electricity as well as on the land. So that place is found to be economical feasible for the big education project. That is the university, right? Or so many other factors of the cost, schedule, assumption which are to be met. You can check it out for the feasibility study. Then yes, is it their benefit to conduct a feasibility study? We cannot be able to start directly with the project of requirement. We have to have conduct feasibility study first, right? So because as it is to be written, the focus of studies which depend upon it is possible to develop a product that matches the project vision statement. And yes, of course it is to be there because we are able to concern with the current estimated cost and schedule for the project. Is the previous solution is more good, or we are seeking for a better solution for the product, right? So both of the things are to be there. So that's why we need to consider the you know uh, the purpose for the feasibility study, right? And one of the more important thing is are the most of the time the requirement are really stable or not. If they are really stable, then the every requirement has been testable, it is to be verified. And most of the time it is to be the detailed interface which we are talking about, most of the things which are concerned in the feasibility study itself. Then most of the things I'm talking about which is the most difficult to gather the requirement, most difficult for the critical, and most of the time it is the error prone, because most of the time the error are propagated in the requirement gathering, right? So most of the you can just see the video, you can just get to know the PPT what is to be there in gathering, because it is the only one method to gather the requirement. It is only the one way methods, and it is only the our favorite method for the all situation. We don't have any other things to depend upon for the requirement gathering. Then to be continued with the same, we have interview with the both parties, It should be open-ended, it should be structured open-ended, where there is no date. And if it is structured, then the structured, the date and the agenda of the schedule is to be, you know, propagated earlier to the team members, that it is to be there on that date, it is to be conducted. Then they have to come with the all documentation. Then they will conduct an interview, right? So it is to be like, they are both to be involved, the both parties, developer, user, as well as the stakeholder, right? So still it is to be continued. So many type of questions that can be asked while I'm going with the just structured interview. Any calculation error, any problem which is to be existing system, or any possible reason for the same. So one example of the student is to be enrolled. You can see that, right? So many things are to be there, which comes in the category of the requirement gathering, and we need to, satisfy with the current policies which is to be there, and any kind of additional functionality which we will like to add. It is there in the first phase of the requirement, that is the requirement elicitation or the requirement gathering. Then another thing is, can we conduct any brainstorming session for the same? Because the project manager along with the team member is used to conduct so many things, because they need to generate some of the quick idea, like a long list of requirement can be there, which must be categorized and prioritized according to the requirement, which is to be added and which not to be added, right? So it can be there. They may have conduct some brainstorming session, they may have some quick ideas, they may have some creative thinking, what kind of requirement which must be added importantly. Then this is how we can deploy to the technical requirement, because later on in the brainstorming session we would like to know that which kind of requirement we would like to add. And then they can make this technical document or T spec which is to be documented. And it is a primary concern, because once we chosen the finest T spec document and it is well documented, then we are satisfied. And this is very much important to the customer as well, right? Then after, we have analysis for the requirement. Then for the analysis, what is to be there? Because whatever we have made, we just make to analyze, we have to refine that structure and we have to scrutinize the data according to the requirement. And what more important is to be there, the document must be consistent every cycle, it should give the same result. And the requirement must be unambiguous, because some requirement that have the multiple meaning but their interpretation is different, and on the own way there may be the different interpretation for the requirement. So how to achieve it? We can just make a context diagram for the requirement. Then it is need to mandate to make a prototype. If it is to be reviewed, then it is fine. Otherwise you'll have to model the requirement. Then after, the structure is to be deployed and you have to finalize the requirement according to the analysis. That is the second phase of the requirement. Now, uh, it is a natural expression. Then for expression, how to flow the data from source to destination, it is to be showed like, you know, the structure is to be deployed. Then for structure, we have certain notation, certain symbol is to be there for the data flow, how to flow data from source to destination. Then what is to be there? The name should be unique, a flow chart should be there, some decision should be made, and how to made it with the help of data flow diagram, we can make it possible. There are some symbols which is to be there, which is to be notified so that the team can understand it. Like the arrow show the flow of data, rectangle show the source or the sink, like this. Circle is showing the process, right? So these notations which is to be used in the SDLC team, they may try to understand what that mean. Okay, so this is how we, try to understand the data flow diagram for the level. So it is to be signified as a level 0, 1 and 2. You can read it so that you may try to understand it. Then again, for analysis, what is to be there, some problem are to be there, how the input function is to be deployed according to the output function, because so many structure is to be deployed. And later on you have to define the structure for the requirement, that is later on called uh, you know data flow diagram according to the structure, right? Then again for the third way, now this DFD is to be deployed in the documentation of the structure. So which format is to be there, like whatever you to be written in the SRS it to be written by the developer as the customer, and it serve as a contract between the both parties, and we have to document that structure in the in the SRS, because some functionalities to be there, some interface, some performance requirement, and how the attributes of the requirement which needs to be propagate, like the design constraint is to be there. So the document which is called SRS document, it should be clearly defined in all the structure. It should not give some ambiguity detail. Then it should have some characteristics. It should be correct, unambiguous, it complete in all sense, and it should be consistent. So the document should be neat and clean. It must be clear so that every you know the both parties can really need to understand, and it should be unambiguous. The requirement must not have the multiple meaning. Then whatever the things we have done it, then we made a review, because as far as we finalize the structure for the requirement, we are unable to change it. Otherwise we have to pay two time extra cost for the same. So it is plan for the review, for the distribute of the structure, the document which is to be there, then read the document, then for organize a review if it is to be required, then again for the review if it is need not to require, then follow up action can be taken off. Otherwise you can have a provision to revise the document. It is still under review, which is called the document which is to be there, require the document. Then once it has to be reviewed, the document called verification, then after later on we have a provision of the requirement validation. So for the validation, you know, some clarification in the requirement, what is to be there, some conflict in the requirement, some unrealistic requirement which are to be there a part of it. Then so many checklists which can be made for the review of the requirement. Is there any kind of redundancy is to be there? It is to be complete in all sense. It should not be give ambiguity in the requirement. It is consistent in all sense. It is up to mark with the organization, and it must conformance to the quality of the software product. Like it should be traceable in some sense. Then what is to be there, for the validation it is required to make a prototype. It should be shown to the both team so that the things can be made very easily. So this is how we validate the requirement. First we learnt about the requirement, go with the requirement process, crucial process, make a review for the requirement, verify the requirement, talked about the SRS, how the contract between the how it is the agreement is to be done between both parties, finalize the feature of the SRS, then after how to validate the requirement or what are the validation activity in the SRS, which is to be bound that of course the requirement is going to be a very very crucial process, and we have to have more care while conduct with the feasibility study in one manner, so that we can finalize that the you know how to review the requirement. So these are the references. So this is about the today lecture. That's it. Thank you.